Before you say a single word, notice who starts to panic. It happens in a blink, a flicker in the eyes, a twitch of the hand, a sudden stiffness in posture. Because silence doesn't scare strong people, it exposes weak ones. The moment you stop explaining yourself, everything shifts. Conversations feel heavier, words hang in the air like smoke, eyes linger longer than they should, people start talking more than they intended, not because you challenged them, but because you didn't. He didn't plan this change. It happened slowly, almost imperceptibly after years of being misunderstood, talked over, blamed, and quietly disrespected. He used to believe that if he just explained better, if he stayed calm enough, kind enough, patient enough, people would finally see his intentions, that reason and logic would finally save him. They didn't. Instead, the more he explained, the less they listened. The more he defended himself, the more they attacked. The more he tried to keep peace, the more chaos followed him. The world had learned how to push him, and he unknowingly trained them. He remembers the nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, the clock ticking loudly in an empty room, his thoughts relentless. Did I say too much today? Did I explain poorly? Did I overreact? Every conversation replayed in his mind, every word dissected, every misunderstanding exaggerated, every small injustice felt heavier than the last. And slowly, exhaustion settled in. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just a deep, aching fatigue that doesn't make you cry, it makes you stop. That day, he chose silence. Not as punishment, not as manipulation, as self-respect. At first, it felt wrong, like giving up, like letting people win. Every instinct screamed at him to speak, to correct the lies forming in real time, to defend himself. But he didn't. And something strange happened. The people who were always loud around him became louder. The ones who loved debates suddenly talked non-stop. They tried to pull him back into arguments he no longer wanted. They filled the silence with words that revealed too much, words that exposed their insecurity. Because silence doesn't defend you. It watches. In meetings, when interrupted, he stopped mid-sentence. He didn't continue. The interrupter laughed awkwardly, then kept talking, then over-explained, then contradicted themselves. Everyone noticed. The tension in the room shifted. He didn't have to say, "Let me finish." Silence said it for him. Weak people can't stand quiet because it removes their disguise. Without noise, they have nothing to hide behind, no reactions to control, no emotions to hijack, so they unravel. At first, people assumed he was upset. Then they assumed he was arrogant. Then they assumed he was plotting something. The truth was simpler. He was done proving himself to people who never tried to understand him. Silence became his filter. Those who needed attention drifted away. Those who thrived on drama grew uncomfortable. Those who depended on his reactions felt powerless. And then there were the others, the calm ones, the grounded ones, the ones who didn't rush him. They didn't fear the quiet. They respected it. That's when he realized something most people never do. Silence doesn't isolate you. It separates you. Weak people leave first. But the price was heavy. Nights were long. Doubts crept in. His mind replayed every moment he stayed quiet, every false story left unchallenged. His ego begged him to speak, to reclaim control, to be seen. That's the moment where most people break, because silence tests you before it rewards you. Then the real test arrived. A confrontation, public, unfair, designed to force a reaction. All eyes on him. He felt his heart pound. His mouth opened, and then he stopped. He said nothing. The silence stretched. Seconds felt like minutes. It pressed down on everyone in the room. You could see it in the way people shifted in their seats, in the way eyes darted from him to the person confronting him and back again. Everyone expected a reaction, a defense, an outburst. He didn't give one. 5 seconds passed, then 10. The one who had accused him cleared their throat and started talking again. Words came faster, less confident, repeated points but changed the wording, added details that weren't there before, justifications no one asked for.
And that's when the mistake happened. They contradicted themselves. Not loudly, not obviously, but enough. A frown came from somewhere, another raised an eyebrow, another leaned back, arms crossed. The silence had done what words never could. It gave people time to think. The accuser felt it. You could see it in their posture. Certainty drained from their face, voice tightened. They laughed at the wrong moment, trying to ease tension they themselves created. And still, he said nothing. Inside, it wasn't calm. His heart raced. His mind screamed at him to speak, to correct the lie, to protect his name, to take control. But he remembered something. Every time I talk, I give them something to grab. So he stayed still. That's when the room shifted. Someone else spoke up, not to defend him, but to ask a simple, neutral question, a question that exposed the gap in the story. The accuser hesitated, then answered, and made it worse. By the time the conversation ended, nobody was looking at him anymore. They were looking at the one who tried to corner him. Silence didn't save him. It redirected the spotlight. After that day, things changed fast. Not quietly, not smoothly. Weak people never let go without a fight. Whispers started, side conversations, subtle digs disguised as jokes, passive-aggressive comments, attempts to provoke him back into the old version of himself. And every time, he gave them nothing. No explanations, no emotional reactions, no late-night justifications. Just calm, controlled, quiet. And that drove them crazy. Because weak people don't want answers, they want access. Access to your emotions, your energy, your attention. Silence locks the door. One person confronted him privately, said he was being difficult, said things would be easier if he just talked more, explained himself, met people halfway. He listened, then asked one question. Why do you need me to explain myself if I haven't done anything wrong? The person froze. They laughed it off, changed the subject, but the message landed. From that point on, he started seeing everything clearly. Who only felt comfortable when he doubted himself, who benefited when he stayed reactive, who lost power the moment he stopped engaging. Silence sharpened his vision.
The days after the first confrontation felt heavier than the fight itself. People were talking about him, quietly, subtly, in whispers that were meant to be overheard. He could feel the energy shift the moment he entered a room. The ones who used to manipulate, provoke, or bait him now hesitated. Their words faltered. Their confidence wavered. The ones who thrived on chaos had nothing to grab onto anymore. And yet, inside him, the war wasn't over. Alone in his room at night, he replayed conversations, dissected interactions, analyzed every glance, every pause, every word left unsaid. The temptation to respond, to justify, to correct was unbearable. Every instinct screamed at him, "Speak, protect yourself, don't let them think they're right." But every time he imagined breaking the silence, he saw the results of the last confrontation. The lies unraveling on their own, the weak exposing themselves without him lifting a finger, the truth shining through without argument. He breathed, and he waited. The next test came at work, not subtle this time, a full-blown attempt to provoke him. A public accusation, crafted carefully to elicit a response, designed to make him appear arrogant, distant, cold. Everyone expected a reaction. The room leaned in, hearts beat faster, eyes widened. The silence stretched like a weight pressing down on everyone. He felt it, the familiar urge to defend, to explain, to attack back. But he didn't. Instead, he observed. The accuser repeated the same accusations, louder this time, adding embellishments. Their voice shook, their posture stiffened. They tripped over words, contradicted themselves, repeated sentences, then added unnecessary explanations. Their energy cracked like thin ice under pressure. And still, he said nothing. The room shifted. People began noticing. The ones who had once respected his compliance now saw the power in restraint. The manipulators realized they could no longer control the narrative. Weakness exposed itself in the most subtle gestures, a twitch of a hand, a flush of the face, the hesitation before words left the lips. The moments stretched, minutes felt like hours, and in the quiet, a revelation formed. Weak people don't crumble under force, they crumble under the absence of it. One of the loudest voices finally cracked, a public outburst, anger spilling over, disproportionate to the situation. Lies mingled with half-truths, stories grew inconsistent, and the carefully constructed image they had built started to collapse. The observers began to whisper, quietly analyzing, comparing, understanding. The narrative was shifting without a single word from him. Silence had done what he could never do with argument. But the battle wasn't just outside. Inside, he faced a storm. Every night brought doubts, every morning a temptation to revert to old habits. The desire to clarify, justify, to fix things pulled at him relentlessly. It was exhausting, almost unbearable, but he held firm. Because he understood something few ever do. Reacting gives others power. Remaining silent takes it away. Over the weeks, patterns became obvious. Certain people thrived on his reaction. Certain people only felt secure when he argued, explained, or defended himself. Certain people had only ever interacted with him to feed their own sense of control. And the weak could no longer hide. They became desperate. Manipulative whispers, passive-aggressive comments, small lies repeated just to provoke a reaction. They tried everything. But he had nothing to give, nothing to respond with, and that drove them insane. Even those who were close, who had been part of his daily life, felt the shift. Some left. Some tried harder to regain control. Some were genuinely curious now, quietly approaching him to understand his calmness, his new strength, his refusal to be drawn into chaos. Each interaction became a lesson, each provocation a mirror showing who relied on his energy to feel powerful. Each confrontation revealed something they had hidden behind noise and chaos. He began to see clearly who belonged in his life and who didn't, not through judgment or reaction, but through observation. Silence sharpened his vision, and yet it was not easy. Some moments brought loneliness, moments when no one spoke and he felt the weight of isolation, moments when the temptation to respond, to explain, to justify, to feel normal was almost irresistible. But every time he reminded himself, the moment you react, you lose control again. The moment you react, weak people gain power. So he waited, and slowly everything began to settle. The manipulators withdrew, the overly emotional ones burned out, the ones who thrived on chaos became invisible. The people who were calm, grounded, and genuine moved closer naturally. The energy in his environment shifted from tension to balance. Then, one day, someone tried once more to provoke him publicly, but instead of anger, he gave them the simplest response possible, a calm, measured smile. No words, no explanations, just peace. The effect was instantaneous. The aggressor's energy dissolved. The tension in the room evaporated. Lies fell apart. The truth revealed itself without conflict. The weak were exposed. The observers understood. And he felt it deep inside. A quiet, unshakable peace that could not be disturbed. He realized that life no longer required constant vigilance or argument. The storms could rage around him, but they could not touch him. Weakness revealed itself. Strength endured. Truth always stood unchallenged. And he understood fully. Silence is not weakness. Silence is mastery. Silence is power. He had learned to claim peace, not by force, but by restraint, not by argument, but by observation, not by chaos, but by stillness. And in that silence, he finally
discovered freedom.
Days turned into weeks, and the tension slowly faded, but the impact of his silence remained. The people who had tried to control him, provoke him, or manipulate him were no longer in charge of his energy. Some left on their own. Some learned painfully that the games they used to play no longer worked, and some quietly respected him. Not because he demanded it, but because he had proven, without words, that he didn't need to prove anything at all. He walked through his days differently now. The rush to respond was gone. The need to be liked or understood evaporated. Even the small annoyances that once triggered anger or frustration now barely registered. Life felt lighter, not empty, not lonely, free. He realized something profound. Silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of control. It doesn't force respect, it allows respect to emerge naturally. It doesn't create enemies, it lets the truth reveal them. And most importantly, it teaches you who truly belongs in your world. The final confrontation came quietly, not in anger, not in drama. Someone tried to challenge him once more, thinking perhaps the old habits had returned. They spoke fast and aggressive, expecting the usual reaction. But he stayed calm, steady, silent. The room held its breath. Then, instead of reacting, he gave the simplest response possible. A calm, measured smile. No words, no explanations, just peace. And that was the moment everything shifted. The aggressors' energy dissolved, their anger faltered, the lies they tried to maintain fell apart. No one had to fight, no one had to argue. Silence had done the work. It had exposed what needed to be exposed, healed what needed to be healed, and cleared the path forward. He felt it deep inside, an unshakable peace that could not be disturbed. The years of chaos, misunderstandings, and unnecessary battles faded into clarity. The noise of the world no longer had power over him. Weakness around him could no longer unsettle him. And the people who mattered, the strong, the honest, the genuine, were drawn to him naturally, like light to light. He walked into each day now with quiet confidence, not loud or flashy, but unmistakably strong, not because he had conquered others, but because he had mastered himself. The realization settled in like sunlight through a window. You do not need to react to be respected. You do not need to explain to be understood. You do not need to fight to reveal the truth. Sometimes the strongest action is doing nothing at all. Because in silence, weak people reveal themselves, and the world shows you who is truly worth your energy. And in that quiet, in that calm, he finally found peace. The battles ended not with words, but with truth. Not with chaos, but with stillness. Not with conflict, but with clarity. And for the first time, he realized peace is not given, it is claimed. And he had claimed it through silence. From that day on, he moved through life unshaken, unbothered, and free. The storms could rage around him, but they could not touch him. Weakness revealed itself, strength endured, and truth always stood unchallenged. Silence had not only changed the world around him, it had transformed him. And in that transformation, he finally understood. He had everything he ever needed. The end was quiet, but it was absolute. Because he had learned the ultimate truth. The strongest voice is the one that doesn't need to be heard. The heaviest presence is the one that doesn't need to announce itself. The deepest power is the one that sits still and lets the world reveal itself. And in that stillness, he finally smiled.